On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
So what do we have in this episode, Mr. John?
Well, Harris, in this week's exciting episode, we go back to Florida for the third part of our exciting conversation with the delightful Katy Elizabeth. And then we are going across to Barbados, where we are going to team up once again with Damon Corrie and hear all about the mystery animals of Guyana.
I really like the old credits.
And now, it's Gwen Dibley's Pearls of Wisdom.
The smaller a lizard, the greater its hopes of becoming a crocodile.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and welcome to another episode of On the Track. For those of you who are not already aware, every Wednesday evening at about 6:30 and every Saturday afternoon at 3 we bring you, well, depends what you want to call it. What should we call it, Louis? How should we describe the show?
The greatest show in the world.
Well, he would say that because he is my very dear sweet producer. Thank you, Louis, for the unsolicited testimonial. And what is
okay, Big Chief.
And what is the show about, Louis?
Unknown animals, out of place animals, and it's full of weird shit and sorry alchemy.
Well, yes, it is, but I prefer to say it's a mélange of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. What's surreality, Louis?
I don't know, but I'm more worried about the word mélange. It sounds a bit like menage, which people might get the wrong idea.
Hello, I'm Lilith Tinkerbell, and I'm a very good cat. And if you want a good example of surreality, how about a talking cat? And Louis, ménage is French for household. It doesn't necessarily mean the sort of smut that your fevered fantasies think it does.
Well, thank you, Lilith Tinkerbell. That's put that young whippersnapper in his place. But before we go any further, I want to tell you about my brother's new project. Well, ladies and gentlemen, much as though it pains me to tell you this, but there are more important things in life than cryptozoology and the other disciplines that we talk about on this show. And there are even more important things than elderly gentlemen dressing up in chicken costumes and generally playing the fool. Because although I tell you that looking at things through humour is one of the best ways of analysing the world around us, there are some things which you can't laugh at, and this is one of them. You may or may not know that my little brother Richard, who's 4 years younger than me, is a clergyman who lives and works in Germany, and recently he visited Ukraine, and he was so upset and appalled at the conditions that he saw while he was there that no sooner had he returned to his wife and family in Germany, but he started up a amazing campaign. In Ireland there's a company called Kelly Kettles who make these wood-burning kettles which do not need external power sources in order to be able to cook and to boil water and to provide heat. And Richard has done a deal with these people, and he has managed to get the Kerry Kettle Company to donate at cost these kettles, which are going to be sent to Ukraine. And Richard is raising money now to buy as many of these kettles as possible. And although I never ask you to raise money on these pages for us, it's very kind of you when you do donate something, but I never ask for money. I now am. Please, can you use the link below and send some money to my brother, who is doing his best to alleviate some of the horrific suffering which the Ukrainian people are undergoing this winter. I am going to be running this advert, because I suppose it's an advert. I've never made an advert before, but I'm going to be running this advert every episode until the springtime. And if the war is still going on when we come to the colder months of the year next year, then I'll be running it again. And whilst still on the subject of my brother, when he was a little boy, he was taught to sing a song which went, Katy, my beautiful Katy, you're the only beautiful girl that I adore. And that seems fairly appropriate now, because my next guest is, once again, Katy. I love soft-shelled turtles. Absolutely fantastic creatures.
And they're doing a breeding program, which I think is fantastic, on the conservation of these turtles. I've got to see them at the aquarium there, but I've never got to see them in the wild. And down here in Florida right now, as I said before, we do have the soft-shelled turtle down here, and they're extremely aggressive. Like I'm sure you've seen video of them lunging out because they're ambush predators, where their neck comes way out and it acts like a piston. And I think Champ is the same type, has the same type of morphology with that neck, where they're like an ambush predator. So that's really interesting. And yeah, but there's so many strange things in the lake that, I mean, I've seen other things on my sonar that I could not explain, that I don't believe were Champ. Just really oddly shaped things, and it's just, what in the world? You just never know what's down there.
So when do you go back to the lake?
I go back on June 1st.
And what's your first job then? What's your first part of your studying?
Well, first job, I think what I'm going to do is I actually have a friend of mine in Scotland that's working on a little bit of an experiment. He actually makes his own flies for fishing. He hand ties flies. And so with the sonar reading in September that we had gotten, and also the sonar readings in 2019, they seem to go after large schools of bait fish. So, we're thinking of trying this thing and making like a huge lure type of thing with a lot of bait fish on it, just for the heck of it, just to see if we'll strike some interest. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm sure people have hooked one before, but you'd have to have some pretty heavy tackle to pull something like that up, obviously. So anybody who's been out there and their lines broke and they're just like, I've heard a lot of stories like that. Of course, it could have been large sturgeon or gar or bowfin, because they can get quite massive as well. So we're going to work on that little project, trying to see if I can get the ROV out there more. I worked with it a little bit, but it's kind of touchy with the controls on my phone. So I'm working on getting a joystick for it, because I don't want to get it down like 150 feet and not be able to get it back up to the surface. So
no, and you don't really want to go diving there if it's full of prehistoric fish and giant lampreys.
Yeah, and it's just kind of kind of freaky when you swim there. I just think it's not necessarily the champ idea. It's the lamprey that freaked me out, like I said. But what I'm really hoping to do, though, the biggest thing is to get some sort of funding to do further eDNA testing of the water, because I did work with a program and they did do an eDNA test, but the biggest issue was the budget. I'm sure they didn't really want to spend much on it. So when the test came back, it was really strange because one of the biggest parts of DNA that showed up was muskellunge, which is a very, very large fish, and they're supposed to be endangered in Lake Champlain. So that was really good, though. It showed that muskellunge are coming back into the lake, which is a really good thing for the ecosystem as a native species. But the only thing that really bothered me was nothing known, like reptile DNA, amphibian DNA, which I believe these animals are ectothermic animals, whether reptile or amphibian or a strange hybrid of both. None of those showed up in the test. And we know for a fact there are turtles in Lake Champlain, there's frogs, there's all kinds of reptiles and amphibians. So I think the test, I think they waited too long also. They waited quite a while to get the test done. And I think a lot of the DNA was degraded too.
How many samples did they take?
They didn't take many. They only took maybe I think it was 5, but that was because the weather started getting bad and we couldn't get out to certain locations. But yeah, I mean, further testing of different sighting areas is really important. Multiple area. I mean, the lake is 120 miles long, and that's a big area to cover. But I mean, the most important thing is getting in the areas where there are sightings and during the season that they're seen. And that's the thing I noticed at Loch Ness. A lot of times when they do research, they're out there in the wintertime. And I'm like, okay, why wouldn't you be going out there when these sightings are happening? Not, you know what I mean? If they do go into a torpor-like state when it gets cooler, they're not going to be swimming around in abundant and maybe shedding DNA. So that's something that I guess a lot of people never really thought about, doing the research at Loch Ness as well.
I think one of the problems there is that Loch Ness in the summer, the prices of hotels and bed and breakfast things skyrocket because it's the tourist season. And
yeah.
So people who are doing research up there try and go there in the winter.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And they don't have to deal with all the tourists running around and the hassle.
So what can people do now? They should contact you through the websites that I'm putting below, but I'm also going to put in the show notes underneath. And what else can any of us do to help?
Just spreading the word, the links that you're going to share on the program today. If anybody could just share those on their Facebook page and on different groups, it would be greatly appreciated. The more people that we get into this organization, the more enlightening it's going to be. And I think working together with people around the world is going to be a lot of fun, and creating new friendships as well. And really getting the lake creature studies, the scientific studies, especially the sonar and the hydrophone work that I've been doing. I think it's going to get that stuff out there more, and it's going to strike more interest with people that are not into that stuff. So sharing the links would be great. And yeah, my Facebook page, International Dracontology Alliance, if you go to that and join the page and the group as well, and keep up to date with anything that we have going on. And there's also a digital newsletter that's in the membership perks as well. Every 2 months, I'll send out a digital newsletter. And actually, people from the organization that do join can contribute to the newsletter too. Any information put out there or lake creature that they really are interested in, or they have some important points of theories that they have, they can send that to me, and they can put that. I'll put it out in the newsletter as well. So I think it's going to be a really interesting group. I think it's going to be something that's going to grow more and more. Right now, it's just been really slow. It's something new. So just having the patience and hoping that people will be more and more interested in lake creatures instead of just Bigfoot.
Well, I wish you every luck in the world. The CFZ will help in any way we can, and come back on the show in a few months' time and tell us how it's going.
I definitely will. And it's always a pleasure being on the show, and you guys are just amazing, an amazing group and so welcoming. I really appreciate everything you guys do.
And now over to my next guest for this show. It's the second part of my interview with Damon Corrie, who is the author of a new book for CFZ Press, and is also a tribal chieftain of the Eagle Clan Arawak Tribe in South America. He is running a GoFundMe at the moment to set up a documentary about cryptids in South America, and so the link to this GoFundMe is all the way through my interview with him. Can you tell me a little bit about the water tiger? Because that's something, the stories have come to Europe, but they're very confusing.
Yeah, I've never seen that particular cryptid myself, but there are so many people native people in different parts of Guyana that have told me about this thing. One person, it was under they believe it was under their canoe trying to capsize it, but they were lashing a paddle in the water and made noise, and eventually it went away. One very good former chief of Toka, he did see it himself as a younger man in his, I think he's 19 or 20. He went with his other brothers, who they were all subsequently became chiefs in the tribe. Richard met all of them, Stoby, Kennard, and Eugene. They were all out hunting trip together, but Eugene was the one near the waterside when the others went to the camp to get something or the other. And he said this thing came out of the water as he turned around, so it was coming while he was back in the water. It was like trying to creep up on him. So he heard this splash in the water, and he looked around and he saw this thing coming out, like coming up the back of the rock towards him, like if it was like, I guess how an ambush predator would move. But then he screamed out, and the thing dove back in the water and swam away. But he said it had, how he described it, the head like a female lion, but the body was different, and the coloration was not pure brown, it was mottled. So that was his description of it. But I've never seen anything like that. And then his other brother, Stoby, he had seen skin in Brazil. Some ranchers said he shot one, and Stoby and all of them are familiar with cattle skins and jaguar skins and cougar skins, and because these are the animals that are in the area. Tapir skin, all the known wildlife and all domesticated animals are known, they're familiar with. And he said this was not any skin he'd ever seen before. I described it as being brown with white spots. And so he didn't see one alive, but he did see a skin that the Brazilian rancher claimed was one of them. This was many decades ago, not recently. So there are cases like that. The times when they have had paw prints near to my, like I'd sling a hammock up near the riverbank when I'm going on these trips hunting in the mountains, the South Pakurama Mountains with these guys from the Makushi village nearby. And they'd wake up in the morning and there'd be huge paw prints past the hammock, but not disturbed us. But to us, it looks like it's just a large jaguar. But I mean, if this thing is a felid, who knows? But yeah, I can't honestly say that I've seen with my own eyes the water tiger. I've only people who are known to be trustworthy and honest in every other regard have said that they've seen these things, but I myself have not seen one.
Then I remember hearing that sometimes the water tiger travels in groups with younger ones around, smaller ones around the big, presumably female.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Which I mean, a jaguar or a cougar would usually have just one or two kittens on average, and they don't really go on jaunts that far with them, you know, walking behind like how a Serengeti lion would, I guess. But I do know, as you know, the giant otters and otters in general do move in packs as well. So yeah, there are some mustelid behaviors, but then there are also some felid features. So it's hard to pin down what genus something like this could really fall under.
I've always thought that it sounded more likely to be something related to the giant otter. Not the same species as the giant otter, but another species of giant otter.
Right. Could be, yes, because it's always associated with water. And I mean, jaguars do like to swim if they have to, but it's not, you know, it's not something where you'll, majority of the time, you'll find any cat, as far as I know, you know, being in the water. So more logical for it to be a mustelid family than being a felid. And I guess maybe the skull shape is slightly different than the giant otter. But yeah, it makes more sense that it would be more likely an unknown species, rarer, larger unknown species in the of giant otter or giant otter family or something like that. That's more credible to me.
I remember from when I was doing the internal design for your book, I remember there were stories about giant eagles or giant birds of prey.
Yeah, that is also more so the mountains, the tribes who live in the swamps and savannas. I've never heard them with any stories about giant eagles, like taking anyone. But yeah, the tribes that live in the Pakarima Mountains, there are some people who have stories of that. And then in other mountain ranges, I understand, as I've met some people from the Andes, that they do have some stories like that from in the Andes as well. So, I mean, we do know science has proven that there was at one time species of eagles far larger than anything we still have existing today that could literally have taken a small human, because as it is, the harpy eagle, which is the biggest known one in Amazonia today, that can pick up an animal the size of, I guess, up to a 3-4-year-old child and fly with it. So, I mean, if you had an eagle twice the size, as we do, I've met some, for example, Patamona tribe, and that are fully grown adults, but they are very short. They're under 5 feet tall, and slim, you know, not obese. So, I mean, their entire weight is like around 90 pounds as a full-grown adult. So, I mean, if they're telling you that stories of within the last few, maybe just after World War II, of giant eagle taking children, you know, and flying away with them, that is not something impossible to imagine, because one of their children, you know, at the ages they're talking about, pre-teen years, they're going to be around 50-60 pounds at the most. So if so heavy, so you know, it's not impossible weights to play with in your mind.
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, there was a giant eagle in New Zealand up until the Europeans.
Yeah.
It was called Haast's eagle.
Right, and that's modern time. Right.
Yeah, that was 400 years ago. So, it's certainly not impossible. you were saying earlier about the footprints of the Dai-Dai. Have you ever seen them?
Once, with my own eyes. I hear descriptions by many people, but once when we were in the South Panorama Mountains, and I know of about half a dozen tales of encounters with Makushis and Patamo people who inhabit that area, of seeing these things with their own eyes, and one man claiming that he was carried for some distance, and I think it's in the book, on the shoulders of one of them. Yeah, so we had gone to an area, and I heard these three loud knocks against a tree trunk. I was wondering, I asked the guys, what was that sound? Is somebody there doing that or something? And they say, that's the Dai-Dai is warning you to keep away from this area, like it's this territory or something. So apparently that's something they do. They'll pick a stout piece of wood and lash it against the trunk of a tree 3 times as a warning signal. And then we did hear a howl, and then something breaking the bushes and running away, because we shouted back. Then it ran through the foliage, and you heard the leaves breaking as this thing gets further and further away. I thought it was tapir or something, because their eyesight isn't very good, and they do run madly directly through the foliage like a rhinoceros would, and make a commotion like that. But they didn't see what it was, but when they went and followed behind, they did not see any tapir tracks, and the branches are broken up to quite a significant level over our head. So tapir is, something that's going to be, its back is going to be at my waist height. So it definitely wasn't a tapir that ran away. So that was the closest encounter that I've had with something like that. And then when we reached that river, because we always camp near to rivers where we could get water for cooking and, obviously to bathe and so on. And there was a large footprint in the sand near to the riverside. So that was the first concrete evidence that I've seen with my own eyes that there's something large there that, that is more credibility to all of these tales of this unknown large hominid.
Well, that is a wonderful collection of unknown animals, and it certainly gives us all food for thought. I very much enjoyed your book. Congratulations. I think it's an excellent book.
Thank you.
And I very much hope that your TV series comes out of it, your documentary series works out. And please, can you come on the show again in a few months' time and tell us how it's going?
Sure. I wouldn't be so, how would I say, my expectations are not that grand for a TV series, but at least if I could do at least one TV documentary, the one TV documentary film, and show people maybe, some entity may then take an interest and say, okay, we would support developing this project further, but at least as a test first offering, I will do at least one, if I get enough crowdfunding support, at least one documentary on this subject matter. And if it is well received and people think there's merit to it going further, well then, I'll do my utmost to further it and hopefully, get a series out of it indeed. But, baby steps, that if you can get at least one documentary done, I think everyone will be pleased with the result.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, wants me to remind you, always press the notification bell, or else you won't be told when the next show's going to be.
And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
And that's about it, ladies and gentlemen. One thing I forgot to mention was that the line drawings in Both this episode and the last episode of The Mystery Animals of Guyana were done by Ant Wallace and are taken from Damon's book. Thank you very much, my dear, for doing them. They made the book even better than it already was. Now, I want to say a big thank you to everybody who has helped this episode, including my producer, Louis, Graham, whose main job these days seems to be pushing me around the hospital corridors in my wheelchair, and my guests this week, who were the lovely Katy Elizabeth and the equally lovely Damon Corrie. Thank you, all of you, and thank you to everybody else involved with the day-to-day running of the CFZ, because I truly couldn't do any of it without you. I will be back on Wednesday. What am I going to be doing on Wednesday? Well, I have no idea because I haven't worked it out yet. Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I know exactly what I'm going to be doing, even though I still haven't filmed it yet. I'm going to be talking about this, a new Bigfoot magazine. So we're going to be talking about that. It's called Bigfoot Quest, and it's really jolly good. And it is done by friend of the show, Steve Baxter. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. And then next week I'm going to be back. What are we going to be talking about? Well, it all depends. I don't actually know yet. I'm doing some interviews later this afternoon, so at least one of them will be in there. And I also want to talk about lampreys. Haha, I'm going to dedicate this episode to you, Katy. So, assuming that you lot are all there to watch, especially you, Katy, you should be watching the show about lampreys. Ha ha! Assuming you're all there to watch, I'll be seeing you.